Hello there. This is MD. Here with you on SaskiYano. Here we go again. We are in a new After Effects tutorial. In this tutorial, you're gonna learn about Alpha and Luma mats and see an example of how each are used. To follow along in this tutorial, make sure to open up the mats file. It'll give you a project that looks something like this. You won't have all of the assets like this video clip here. So let's talk about what mats are. Mat is an abbreviation for track map. And that's when you use another layer to drive your target layer's opacity. I'm gonna jump into the Alpha mats composition here. And let me walk you through what I have going on. At the bottom layer stack, I have a green solid. I'm just soloed it up there. You can see it's nothing special, just a really bright green solid. Above there, I have a layer named pattern. This is a solid layer with a couple of effects applied to it. I have a fractal noise effect and a coloroma effect. That's what's generating this pattern here. However, the layer that's directly above that is what this pattern layer is using for its transparency. So, this pattern layer is getting all of its transparency information from the layer directly above it, and that's because it's set to Alpha Mat. If I set this to No Mat, you can see that it looks different. This is what the layer actually looks like. But when I apply iTrack Mat instead of Alpha Mat, it's going to be using the alpha information, which is the transparency of the layer, to drive its transparency. Let's take a look at this matte layer. Right here. I'm gonna solo this matte layer here. Also gonna draw your attention to this info panel. Right up here. If you haven't checked out before, go ahead and open that up. And you notice right here, we have a little column. RGB and A. This stands for red, green, blue, and alpha. The alpha channel is that pixel's transparency. If you hover your mouse over your composition, you'll see that those numbers will dance all over the place. The thing that I want you to look for right now is check out the alpha channel. So, as I hover my mouse over this rectangle, you'll see the alpha channel is reading 255. And that's because, right now, this project has a bit depth of 8 bits. Each channel only gets 8 bits. That means 256 values. Now you may be wondering why the alpha is reading to 55 and up to 56. That's because that last value there to get us to 256 is 0. So it starts at 0 and ends at 255. So anything that reads it to 55 is fully opaque. It does not matter what the color is. The color is, in this example, irrelevant. It makes no difference. You can change the color to anything you want. As long as this rectangle has 100% opacity, it'll be doing the same thing. It doesn't matter what the color is. Now, in this larger rectangle here, I have a gradient. If I open that up and select it, I'll open up the fill here. So you can see how that's working. The gradient goes from red to black. But again, the color doesn't matter because this layer is set to alpha mat, which means it's only looking at the transparency. It doesn't matter what the color is. So, in this gradient, the opacity for the gradient has been set on one side to 0 and on the other side to 100%. So, watch what happens if I take this rectangle and I adjust its gradient. If I change the color, nothing will happen. It doesn't matter what color it is. However, if I change its opacity, then you can see a change. Alright, so when your fill layer is set to alpha mat or alpha inverted, it's getting all of its transparency information from this layer's transparency. not its color information. And there's two ways to set this. You can set it to regular alpha matte. Or you can set it to alpha inverted matte. Which is the exact opposite. As if I rebuild this layer. But I flipped all the opacity values. This is just a much easier way to do that. Sometimes you need to set your layer to alpha matte. Sometimes you need to set it to alpha inverted matte. Let's look at another example. In this Luma matte's composition, I basically have the same thing. The same 3 layers. However, the pattern layer has been set to Luma matte. So it's going to be getting its transparency information from the luminance of this matte layer directly above it. And if I solo that for you, you can see that. This time I set this up to be black and white. And that's because things that are fully white. And you can see, if you look at the info panel, that this rectangle is reading 255. 255. 255. That means it's fully white. And when you're set to Luma matte, things that are fully white are fully opaque. See that? Things that are black are fully transparent. So you can see that my grading goes from black to white here. And that is what is being reflected with my pattern layer here. Let me show you an example of how you might actually use alpha and Luma mattes in some real projects. I'm gonna jump over to my SaskiYano composition here. I'll just play a little bit of this so you can see what's going on. Now, in order to create this look, I am using an alpha matte. There's other ways to do it for sure. But the easiest way for me was to use an alpha matte. So what I have going on here is a background layer, which is a video clip with some effects applied to it. I have a curves effect, which is darkening it. And then I'm using a Gaussian blur to blur it out. On the layer that's directly above it, you can see that there is a track matte applied, which you can also see just to the left of the layer name here. Those little icons indicate that this has a track matte applied. And this is the matte layer right here. So this is the same footage layer. If I set this to none, you can see that the blending mode has been set to add. So if I set it to normal, you can see it's just the same exact footage layer as the one below. I'll send it back to add. When I set this to alpha matte, it's going to be using the layer directly above it for its transparency. And in this case, that is a text layer. So that is what is doing this word cutout sort of effect here. It's just a simple text layer and an alpha matte. Now, you saw me mention a few effects in this tutorial. You're gonna learn more about effects coming up in the next tutorial. So check that out. Finally, we are done for today. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave your comment down below in the comments section. Also, if you want to learn more, take a look at our first channel, Everything PS. See you next time. Bye.